Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Howard Martin. As the chair of the Bevis Marks Synagogue Heritage Foundation, it's my pleasure to welcome you all today. Before we start, just a couple of reminders. The session is being recorded and will be available shortly afterwards on YouTube, and we will send you the details. We will be reserving some time for questions at the end of the presentation. We've had a number of questions in advance, thank you, but encourage you to ask questions using the Q&A facility on Zoom as we go along. Today's session is designed to introduce you to an amazing new visitor attraction in the City of London, a brand new centre built in 1701. The new Education and Heritage Centre at Bevis Marks Synagogue, which we will call the Visitor Centre this afternoon, is due to open in autumn 2022. We are supported by the National Lottery Heritage Fund and by our other generous donors. Thank you. We are also proud to have the patronage of His Royal Highness Prince Charles, who has sent us this message of support. This afternoon, we will outline why the centre will be so interesting and a must-visit attraction for all who live or work in the city, and for people visiting the city to experience the wonderful cultural offering. Bevis Marks will be an attraction for adults and children of all faiths and none. We will also explain our wonderful schools programme and give you a short taste of some of the stories and exhibits. The Spanish and Portuguese community at Bevis Marks is very proud of its special relationship with the City of London. We were the first Jews allowed to resettle in the country in the mid-17th century and lived and worshipped on the eastern edge of the Square Mile. My own family arrived in the 1670s. We've been allowed to practice our faith and live in peace for over 350 years. Today's session is timed deliberately to coincide with the Jewish festival of Passover, which starts on Saturday, 27th of March, a time when we celebrate and give thanks for our freedom. The freedom the Jewish people have enjoyed in this country is in large part thanks to the welcome we were offered by the city and its people. Thank you. So it is most appropriate for the Right Honourable Lord Mayor of London, William Russell, to say some words of welcome. We are also pleased that the Lady Mayoress is with us today. My Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Howard, for that introduction. And good afternoon, Rabbi Morris, aldermen, members, ladies and gentlemen. The Lady Mayoress and I are delighted to be here with you all. It's just a pity that this could not take place in person. But hopefully we will all be together soon. For those of you who don't know me, I am William Russell, the 692nd Lord Mayor of the City of London. I have become the first Lord Mayor since William Cubitt to be elected for a second term. In fact, there was another Lord Mayor, probably the most famous Lord Mayor to serve multiple terms, was Dick Whittington, who served as Lord Mayor 4 times and did back-to-back years in 1397 and 1398, a feat I do not intend to repeat. What makes the City of London so special is its heritage. As the one non-Christian house of worship in our historic cityscape, Bevis Marks Synagogue is incredibly important to us. We are proud to house the Cathedral Synagogue of UK Jewry, the only synagogue in the world to have held continuous worship for over 300 years, dating back to 1701. The City of London was the first place in the UK where Jews were able to settle again in the 1650s after expulsion in 1290. It was in the city that British Jews could first hold public office, becoming sheriffs and Lord Mayors. Sir David Solomons, a leading figure fighting for the rights of Jews, was the first Jewish sheriff and later Lord Mayor in 1855. The City of London, therefore, has a long relationship with the British Jewish community and continues to be a place for Jewish people to live, work, and worship. This year, the synagogue will be undertaking a restoration project, and by the autumn of 2022, will be welcoming visitors to its brand new cultural centre. You will hear more about this over the next hour from Rabbi Morris and the Foundation's Heritage Advisor. The development of a heritage centre at Bevis Marks Synagogue is an exciting project. It is very much in line with our post-COVID focus on developing diversity, culture, and heritage in this great city. I'm glad that the city's Resource Allocation Subcommittee just yesterday approved a £240,000 grant from our Community Infrastructure Levy to the Bevis Marks Synagogue Heritage Foundation to support community outreach, restoration work, and access improvements. I, for one, look forward to visiting the centre when it opens, and this is a great example of why Londoners and others continue to come to the city, making it the centre of London's commercial and cultural life. Now I'd like to hand back to Howard and Rabbi Morris. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your support, my Lord Mayor. And thank you also to the city for the very tangible support that we received yesterday. That's absolutely fantastic news and very exciting. Thank you. As you say, Bevis Marks Synagogue is the only non-Christian house of worship in the city and is also widely acknowledged as the cathedral synagogue of Anglo Jewry. Now, we know that many people are aware there is a historic synagogue on Bevis Marks, but many are not. So where is Bevis Marks? It is just part of a road that runs from Liverpool Street Station at one end down to Aldgate at the other. It is parallel to the Houndsditch. I mention this because we know so many people have walked past the gates without noticing the secluded synagogue and the courtyard. As you will hear in a moment, that private, secluded setting was deliberate and a necessity in the past. Bevis Marks Synagogue's past is full of interesting and sometimes surprising stories. I'm now going to hand over to Rabbi Shalom Morris to explain the significance of the synagogue and the community and share some of the stories. Rabbi Shalom is also a historian, and despite only being with the community for 6 years and coming from the other side of the pond, he is so knowledgeable about the fascinating story of our community. Over to you, Rabbi Shalom.
Thank you so much, Howard, for that very warm welcome. And thank you to the Lord Mayor and to all of you for joining us here today on what is a very special occasion for us at Bevis Marks Synagogue. It is a great honor to be the rabbi of the UK's Cathedral Synagogue. And while there is so much to tell about a synagogue that has been in continuous use for over 300 years, today I'm going to share with you some of the highlights of the story of Bevis Marks Synagogue as it relates to our historic building, the Jewish community, and as a religious site. And ultimately, how all of that relates to our new visitor center. While the story that I'm going to tell you and that we aim to tell in this visitor center is in some ways particular, its message is ultimately universal. And that is what makes it so important. I'd like to begin by elaborating a bit on the backstory to how the community ended up here in London. The synagogue's founders first arrived in London in 1656, in the 1650s, having escaped religious persecution in the Iberian Peninsula, Spain and Portugal. It's the origin of the name of the community, sometimes referred to as the Spanish and Portuguese synagogue. There, Jews, as we know, were persecuted by the Spanish Inquisition. Many Jews left, others were forced to go underground, living outwardly as Christians and privately as Jews at the risk of their life and livelihood. The image you see here is a painting depicting the Plaza Mayor in Madrid, where a auto de fe took place, one of these public parades of those who had been convicted by the Inquisition, and speaks to what was a very dark moment in our founders' history. But amazingly, they were able to find their way to London in the 1600s. And here they were able to find freedom of worship, the ability to live once again openly as Jewish people. Indeed, throughout the 1600s, the community continued to grow, so that by the late 17th century, they had outgrown their somewhat temporary place and were able to build the first synagogue in a century here in London. And here you can see an image of it from the 19th century. It was built by a student of Sir Christopher Wren. And indeed, today, it's actually one of the only remaining examples of a complete interior and exterior Wren-style church in all of the city of London. It was, as Howard mentioned, built just within the eastern fringes of the city of London, set within a courtyard away from a busy street. And that was intentional. The Jewish community was trying to do its best after its history of persecution to keep a low profile and to do whatever they could to not cause any offense inadvertently to their majority Christian neighbors. Indeed, this experience of a secret place within the city can still be felt whenever entering the quiet, private courtyard space around the synagogue. You can hear some noise now. That's some of the restoration work currently taking place at the synagogue site. Thankfully, since those early times, London has continued to be a place, a safe haven for its Jewish inhabitants. Most notably, it was a place of safety for Jews during the ravages of the Holocaust. And that has made Bevis Marks Synagogue today the longest continuously worshiped synagogue in the world, certainly in Europe. And indeed, throughout its history, Bevis Marks has maintained a very close relationship with its City of London neighbors. Some examples: donating towards the rebuilding of St. Paul's after the Great Fire, buying shoes for local needy children, and presenting a gift annually to the Lord Mayor up through the late 18th century. With some more on that later. Indeed, members of the community became active in city life, eventually serving in government when the law allowed for Jews to do so in the 19th century. And this included one of our most famous members, Sir Moses Montefiore, who became sheriff in the city of London in 1837. Until this day, whenever Lord Mayors visit the synagogue, they are invited to sit in his seat. Another well-known member of the community was Benjamin Disraeli, who, having converted to Christianity as a child, later became Prime Minister of the UK. As mentioned, the synagogue has really continued to operate since it was completed in 1701. It, even till this day, has prayers, services held daily, and it's also a destination for weddings and other social and educational gatherings for Jewish city workers and for members of the broader Jewish community. Bevis is a site of also important oral and cultural heritage too, as it maintains the unique Jewish traditions and prayer melodies of the Spanish and Portuguese Jews, some melodies that can't be heard anywhere else on earth, save at Bevis Marks Synagogue. This amazing feature attracts thousands of visitors a year, many who spend the weekend right here in the City of London so that they can experience our special worship for themselves. Indeed, Bevis is the cathedral synagogue of British Jewry, and as such, hosts events throughout the year for major Jewish celebrations and commemorations, as well as for City of London events, such as Jewish Masters of Livery Companies and Jewish Lord Mayors as well. And of course, Prince Charles has also been to the synagogue, most recently, I believe, in 2001 for the 300th anniversary of the synagogue. However, moving on to today, our visitor center will highlight all of these components, the special relationship between Bevis Marks Synagogue, the broader Jewish community and the City of London, as well as the community's strong tradition of integration with British society and the unique traditions that the synagogue preserves. A visit to the synagogue will be an enriching experience, therefore, for people of all faiths and none to learn about the unique place of minority groups in the City of London and in British society. Indeed, we will have a special schools program, which you'll hear more about shortly. However, in sum, while our synagogue has remained private for so long, we are looking forward to welcoming all of you to our hidden treasure to learn and to experience what makes this gem so special right here in the City of London. 320 years in the making. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi Shalom. So many interesting stories. I've listened over the years to many of your fascinating talks and know that you're just scratching the surface. In the visitor center itself, we'll be going into not just more detail, but covering much more of the fascinating ground about the community and the synagogue. Just a reminder before we move on to use the Q&A button on the Zoom. We already have a number of questions coming through. Thank you. So with an expected 40,000 visitors a year, you can see that we are really aiming to lift the cloak of privacy that has been the tradition and necessity of this community. We are particularly excited about our schools program. For 4 mornings a week, the visitor center and synagogue will be dedicated to school groups. A vitally important role we will play is to help young people understand and appreciate a variety of cultures, faith, and backgrounds. We hope to play our small part in promoting diversity and understanding in our city, our country, and around the world. Just to mention, actually, I've just been told we have around 600 people on the webinar this afternoon. I'm finding this a very strange experience. It's the first time I've done one of these things where I can't see everybody. So I hope you're enjoying it, and thank you again. That's an amazing number of people who are showing interest and support this afternoon. Thank you. Let me now introduce Marilyn Scott, who will go into more detail about the schools program and talk about 2 or 3 of the artifacts in our wonderful collection. Marilyn is our heritage advisor. She has worked in museums, galleries, and heritage attractions for over 25 years and is currently director of the award-winning Lightbox in Woking, Surrey, winner of the Art Fund Prize. Marilyn has worked in national museums at both the V&A and Science Museum and for the National Trust. She is a lead member of our wonderful professional team and a real expert in her field. Over to you, Marilyn.
Thank you so much, Howard, and welcome this afternoon from all of us at Bevis Marks. As Howard has said, a major role for the visitor centre will be to invite people of all ages to learn the history and traditions of the Jewish religion. Learning and engagement is a key activity for the Visitor Centre, which will be open to everyone, including adult groups who can tour the synagogue and attend programmes of talks and lectures, visit the cafe and visit the historic displays all year round. In particular, young people from schools all over London and all over the UK will be invited to visit Bevis Marks, and will welcome pupils from schools representing other faiths or no faith. The school groups will visit the synagogue for a guided tour. They'll then move on to the visitor centre where they can look at displays and be able to understand the history of Bevis Marks in the city and its importance in the history of European religion. The role of Bevis Marks is particularly relevant to the national curriculum, where faith studies are compulsory from Key Stage 1 to Key Stage 3. In addition to being the oldest synagogue in continuous use in Europe, Bevis Marks has the most remarkable collection of items relating to the history of the Jewish faith and to the community. These items will all be available for visitors to see when the new visitor centre opens at the synagogue in 2022. This is an image of the new gallery. The collections at Bevis Marks range from textiles and paintings to archives and records, tracing the history of the community from the 17th century. This is an image of a wonderful oil painting dating from 1675. It shows the tablets of the Decalogue flanked by Moses and Aaron. It's a work by Aaron de Chavez, and interestingly, it shows the commandments translated into Spanish, showing the Spanish heritage that is so important to Bevis Marks. The silver collection is particularly fine, and it will be shown in the original undercroft of the synagogue. And you can see here an image of what that will look like. All the items which will be on show have been in store for many, many generations. And the new visitor centre is the very first opportunity to bring them all together in one place in this wonderful treasury. Interestingly, some of the finest silver items have a very special connection with the Lord Mayor of London and the city. The synagogue has always highly valued its position in the heart of the city, as you've heard, and this manifested itself through an annual gift each year from the synagogue to the Lord Mayor. The practice was begun in 1679, 30 years before the building of the current synagogue. A gift was made of a silver salver, originally piled high with sweetmeats. Later, this was transferred into a gift of £50, enclosed in a purse, which could then be used by the Lord Mayor to commission a piece of commemorative silver. This practice inspired the important series of Lord Mayor's dishes, of which the earliest to survive is that of 1697. The dish was at first a highly decorative embossed salver, and later in 1720 this became plainer. Later again it was transformed into a handsome cup and cover, which remained the standard style until the practice was abandoned in 1779. The Jews were not alone in this practice of presenting a gift to the Lord Mayor. The French and Dutch Protestant churches did the same. The first item we look at is English silver, a Lord Mayor's dish by Robert Hill, dating from 1728. This was originally presented by the congregation of the Spanish and Portuguese synagogue to Sir Edward Beecher, the Lord Mayor of London, in 1728. The dish later found its way back into the congregation, and during the Second World War was presented to Sir Samuel Joseph, the Lord Mayor, in 1942. It then passed to his son, Sir Keith Joseph, the well-known Conservative MP. It was reacquired back into the synagogue collection in 1999. The second item is an English silver Lord Mayor's cup and cover. As I referred, this was the last iteration of the gifts. This is by John Payne in 1772 and was a gift to the Right Honourable William Nash, Lord Mayor in 1772 and holder of the Chief Magistrate's office. This came back into the collection of the synagogue in 1935. We end with a final item, which is an example of the wonderful collection of Torah finials or rimonim, which are used to decorate the Torah scrolls in the synagogue. All of these items will be on show in the new display opening in the vaults of the synagogue in 2022. Now, returning back to Howard.
Marilyn, thank you. Thank you so much. Once again, I know that, because I've heard you do it, you could have talked for hours on the stories and the collection. So thank you for just giving us a little taste, and particularly a taste directed towards some of the relationships with the City of London. That's absolutely great. Thank you. So just another reminder about questions. I can see quite a lot coming through. I'm now beginning to wonder whether I have time to answer all of your questions, but do keep them coming. We will try and answer all the questions. If we can't answer them, we will try and follow up afterwards and let you have some answers. But thank you so much. Some great questions coming through. And we want to allow plenty of time for the questions. So we've really tried in this presentation to outline just three things. First, the exceptional significance of Bevis Marks Synagogue in so many ways. The wonderful relationship with and contribution to the City of London. And third, that contribution will be taken to another level in 2022 when the visitor centre opens, perfectly timed to play a big role in the city's post-COVID recovery plans, helping to revitalise the City of London and adding a substantial footfall and contributing to London's cultural and diversity offer. Before we move to your questions, let me just take a minute to ask for your help. Would you please help us get the word out about Bevis Marks Synagogue and about the visitor centre? Tell your friends. Our website address is up on the slide. It's a very basic website at the moment. We're a charity, but we are looking to update the website soon. But please go on the website, it's interesting, and sign up to be a friend of the foundation. And we are still fundraising, particularly to ensure we can do everything we'd like to do with the schools programme. So if you are able to support us with a donation, that would be wonderful. You can email Adam. I don't know if he's going to thank me for this. Adam is our head of our fundraising activity. You can email Adam at the address on the slide or find him on the website by clicking on Support the Foundation. Great. Let's move to your questions. And the first question, I'm going to invite my Lord Mayor to ask the first question.
But I just want to I'm breaking the script a bit, but I just wanted to just say, Marilyn, that was fascinating. I love my history, and I've written a couple of the things down, but Sir Samuel Joseph, Lord Mayor 1942, my great grandfather was Lord Mayor 1938, Sir Frank Bowater. So the thought that he would have known Sir Samuel Joseph very well makes it really touches me. And I just think the whole history and the connection to the mayoralty is extraordinary. Yes. And I know you would have been to the plate room at the Mansion House, but one of the things that I were trying to do, and the Lady Mayoress, is to do something to show more of that plate room. And you can imagine Lord Levine is involved in that discussion as well, because we feel that plate room is hidden away, whereas you're opening your plate room, so to speak, up. And I think that is wonderful. And I generally believe that this is going to be, a global tourist attraction, links in with the Culture Mile. And that comes perfectly to my question. How do you think Bevis Marks Visitor Centre can link in with the other destinations in the city's Culture Mile? Because we've got so much going on in the city, and our history is incredible.
I think we've definitely got ambitions to involve City of London guides. We've already been in touch with them, and we will be providing some training so as they will understand why Bevis Marks is so important. We are already working with the Museum of London in its current location. They are helping us with our displays. They're helping us with loans. So when they move to the new site, we very much hope that we can engage with them, that we can do cross publicity. We're already working with a number of the city churches, obviously places of faith in the city. We can link all those places of faith together. So it's a great opportunity for us. The Culture Mile is something we really want to be engaged with.
Very exciting. Thank you.
Thank you, Marilyn, and thank you, Lord Mayor, for that question. I've got a question now that came in before the session, in fact, from Stella. Stella was asking, how accessible will the visitor centre be to those with disabilities? Stella, thanks for that question. A major element of the project is to make the synagogue and associated visitor centre more accessible. Look, there are some limitations in a 1701 grade 1 listed synagogue, but we are putting in a lift and ramps, and we will be doing our very best to ensure that the visitor centre will be very accessible and the synagogue as accessible as possible. In fact, the National Lottery Heritage Fund, who are supporting us, make it a requirement of these kind of projects that we provide good accessibility. So great question there, Stella. Thank you very much. I've got one now for Rabbi Morris, although I call him Rabbi Shalom. Question. This is from Douglas, and then there's been a supplementary as well, I think. But I think they're related questions. I'd be very interested to hear who the original founders or members of the community were. Where did they come from? Why did they leave? I think you touched on it a little bit. Where did they live? And were all the original people arriving Sephardi Jews, i.e. Jews originating from Spain and Portugal? And then there's I think a related question, Rabbi, which is about the relationship with the ancient synagogue of Amsterdam. So perhaps I'll leave it at two. Two's probably enough, isn't it, in one go? So over to you, Rabbi.
Thanks, Howard. Yeah, there's been a lot of kind of related types of questions. So I'll just kind of give the brief answer. So the brief answer is that the community over the centuries has been made up of Jews from all over the world. Certainly some of the original founders had come from Spain and Portugal, but many were actually coming via other places like Amsterdam or Hamburg as well, Livorno, places in Italy. as well as Ashkenazi Jews too, and in the early years of the synagogue as well. And really over the centuries, as Jewish people have moved to London from other places, North Africa, from the former Ottoman Empire, from the Middle East, from America now, wherever they come from, they've joined the synagogue. And so today, the synagogue is incredibly diverse, with members who come from, all kinds of Jewish ethnic backgrounds, which makes it into a very inviting and welcoming and diverse special synagogue, which is still, though, deeply rooted in its kind of original Spanish and Portuguese traditions as well. So I hope that gives a bit of a brief overview of the makeup of the synagogue over the centuries.
Very good, thank you. Thank you, Rabbi. I'll pick up the next question. We've had a number of questions expressing some serious concerns about the planning applications. There are 2 planning applications on the doorstep of the synagogue and the courtyard and what will be the visitor centre. I'm not going to put the Lord Mayor on the spot here and he may wish to comment afterwards, but just a few comments from me. The Lord Mayor and the Planning Committee in the city are aware, I think, they will be aware of we've had about 1,500 or so public objections, as well as strong objections from Historic England, the Chief Rabbi, the Board of Deputies, the Georgian Society. I could go on and on. Some of the reasons for the huge concerns are the height of the office towers, the risk of damage to the fabric of the synagogue, and the effect of changed wind patterns on the roof and ventilation system. So we are very concerned. We are, making views known. The proposals would really just cast a shadow over the site and threaten the very future of our religious prayers and practices in and around the synagogue, particularly now that the site will be used almost 24/7. Look, the heritage sites of this sort of outstanding significance, including their settings, are protected by the planning policies in local plans, and that includes the current and the draft future City of London plans. And Historic England, I think, have been quite vocal, confirming that these office towers would be really outside of these policies. So they would loom right over and threaten the future of what until now has been a quiet and private religious space for all these years. So look, we know the Lord Mayor and his colleagues have all the information needed to understand these concerns, and we hope the right decisions are taken by the Planning Committee in due course. But my Lord Mayor, would you like to
No, I mean, I would just reiterate what you said. I mean, I recognise personally how important these issues are. The city's local plan includes protections for heritage sites, as you said, and named Bevis Marks Synagogue as one of those sites. And, it's specific applications for the Planning and Transportation Committee. And I will let them know, the Planning and Transportation Committee, know that these concerns are raised. So that's all I would add to it. But thank you for addressing it.
Thank you very much, my Lord Mayor. Thank you. Now, here's an interesting one. I'm going to pass. I think I've noted just today about 10 people have asked almost the same question. And funnily enough, the presenters just gathered for a minute or two before we started. And the Lord Mayor, in fact, asked exactly the same question as well. So the Rabbi, so the question is it Bevis Marks or Bevis Marks? Now, I have to tell you, and what's the origin of the name? Now, I'll answer the first part, which is, it depends who you ask. So the Rabbi says Bevis, I say Bevis. I've been in the synagogue, forever, and that's what I've always called it. So I think that's a little bit of you say tomato and I say tomato and that kind of thing. But Rabbi, what about the origin of the name and the site itself? And there's some interesting links even before the synagogue was there that I think people would be interested to hear about.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I mean, as everyone knows, the City of London is very historic, and there's quite a lot of history behind all the names around here. And the name of the road that the synagogue is on is Bevis or Bevis Marks. And that name dates back to the Middle Ages for various reasons. And the synagogue is known simply based on the street that it's on. So it's called Bevis Marks Synagogue. But the synagogue actually has a real name, which we use when we write it in Hebrew, which is Sha'ar HaShamayim, which means gate of heaven, which is a reference to the dream of Jacob and the ladder, where he said, this is the gate of heaven, this is the house of God. And it's this sense that the synagogue is a place, a conduit between this world and the world above. And quite literally, when you come into the courtyard and you look up and you see the beautiful sky around, you really have that sense of the connection between the synagogue and the heavens. But for short, we just refer to it as Bevis Marks Synagogue.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi. I was jotting these down earlier. Now the list has got so long, I'm now flicking through the questions on my screen. So just give me, yes, one for Marilyn, I think. This is coming from Flora. Marilyn, what was the reason for the yearly gift to the Lord Mayor to cease? So why did the practice cease, I guess, is the question.
We have no real evidence, no written evidence as to why it ended, but I think it probably became, the synagogue had become really so well integrated by the late 18th century. The synagogue had become so well integrated into the city, and the links were very, very strong, and it was no longer really felt that there needed to be this sort of almost annual kind of supplication to the city. So it moved out of current practice. So I think it was simply time moved on, and the synagogue had become completely integrated into the city.
Thanks, Marilyn. There've been a number of questions about sort of genealogy research and access to archives, and one or two people like Kevin Martin, who may well be a relation. I don't know, Kevin. If you're a relation, hi. We haven't met before, but a lot of people are asking around, what they'll be able to do. All I'll say is we have 18 months until we open, and the issue of access to archives, genealogy, and so on is very much on our list of things to address. We know there is a huge demand out there. Some of it actually, I think, inspired maybe from by the Spanish and Portuguese governments introducing right of return laws some years ago. In fact, yours truly is going along in a couple of months to pick up his Portuguese identity card, having got his Portuguese birth certificate. So there is an acknowledgement, I think, of some of the things that went on, bad things that went on in the past, and a welcoming. So there is a huge interest around the world. We know that, and we are just working at the moment on how we best play our part in that. So thank you for all those questions. I can't give you a definitive answer today, but we'd really welcome any further ideas or suggestions. So either on the Q&A or afterwards, do let us know if you've got an interest in this. We suspect there's a very big demand, which if we can help play a part in addressing that, that would be great. One for Rabbi Morris, which has come up from a few people, which was sort of, which is actually about the architecture of the synagogue. So you mentioned the Wren period, that it's a Wren period, Wren style building. But people are asking if you can say a bit more and about who the builder architect was, and maybe you could address, Rabbi, the question of whether being a Quaker, whether payment was actually taken by the builder for this religious site. So could you pick up on those?
Yeah, so I'm happy to pick up on this. So one of the things that's I don't know, I love it about the synagogue is there's quite a lot of kind of oral traditions about the community's history, not all of which are documented. And so one of those is that Joseph Avis, who was the builder, was a Quaker and didn't accept payment. We don't have any evidence that he was a Quaker. We don't have any evidence that he didn't receive payment. And there's a number of these kinds of traditions about the synagogue. There's a tradition that one of the central beams that hold the chandeliers in place in the synagogue was a gift from Princess then Queen Anne from a decommissioned naval vessel at the very end of the 17th century. And there's a variety of these kinds of stories that we don't have evidence for. What I think is beautiful about them, and again, I can't say whether they're true or not, is whether they're true or not, they actually convey something really important. And what they ultimately convey is, I think, the relationship between the Jewish community and those around them. You know, whether it was other minority groups like the Quakers, whether it's with the royal family and their neighbors more broadly. And I think that's, you know, what I take from these stories is, true or not, they certainly convey a truth, which was the positive relationships. And I think that's something to be, to definitely take note of. So thanks for asking that.
Great, thank you again. I've got a question I'm going to ask Marilyn to comment on, and Amanda Newman, who is our project manager, and has made herself, thank you Amanda, available for questions as well, but probably Marilyn to start with. So these questions revolve around a little bit more on the schools program, but also an online offering. So one question from Michael is, how will your greatly admired schools program overlap with the Jewish museums in Camden, who I understand are already experiencing difficulties? Okay, that was the question. And then Cheryl asks, living in the north of England, my wife is from the north of England, so I know the north of England. Zoom has been a wonderful opportunity to attend lectures and visit venues, which under normal circumstances I wouldn't be able to visit in person. Whatever you do with the visitor centre, is there any way you could incorporate virtual visits and access to exhibitions and displays online for those of us not living on the doorstep of this marvellous place? Marilyn, would you like to pick that one up?
Yes, thanks, Howard. First part of the question, we are actually working in partnership with the Jewish Museum. We will ourselves have quite a small staff at the visitor centre, and the Jewish Museum has amazing expertise in learning, education in terms of the Jewish faith. And so we've done the sensible thing, rather than try and set ourselves up as experts in this field. We've worked in partnership, and partnership is an absolute byword for this whole project. So the Jewish Museum will actually be delivering our learning and schools programs. So they're really important partners for us. Second part of the question, we have obviously quite a simple website at the moment, but the plans are to have a much improved website. We hope to be able to provide access to all of our collections online. So we'll have an online digital catalogue with full illustrations of all of the items, some of which I've talked about. We will certainly try and have a virtual tour of the synagogue. So if you can't get there, you can actually enjoy it. You can enjoy some of the music. We're doing a lot of work on oral history at the moment, interviewing people who have early memories in their childhood of coming to the synagogue. And all of those oral histories will be available on the website. So we very much hope to be able to offer a really good digital experience. And that's part of the lottery project.
Marilyn, sorry, that's great. Thank you. I've just made a mistake, and when muting myself, because I was about to cough, I find I have to go right the way back and scroll all the way through the questions. So there was a really interesting question, which I'm going to ask the rabbi from Marianne. How important is daylight to the synagogue and its rituals and worship? I'm guessing that Marianne is asking this because of the comments about the planning applications.
Right. Thanks for asking that. So, I mean, as you would expect, hugely important. It's a building from 1701, constructed before electricity was a thing. And even today, we have very limited electricity. There's very little that you can do with a grade 1 listed site like this in terms of changes to the building. So we do very much rely on daylight. Jews pray out of the prayer book on a weekly basis. We read hundreds of pages, and certainly elderly members who need a lot of light in order to read. So there's quite a direct correlation between good light in the synagogue and the ability for the synagogue to simply function according to its original purpose, which it has done throughout the centuries, which is to be a synagogue where people can worship. So I'll just say in short, it's hugely important, and if daylight were to be diminished, it would be devastating. I actually don't quite know what we would do.
Thank you very much, Rabbi. I'll just try and answer a couple of easy ones. I get the easy ones and I throw the difficult ones to my colleagues. So are you intending to have a gift shop? Yes, we will, and there'll be a little cafe as well. Can you display any external sketches of the proposed buildings and layouts? If you go on, I'll give you the website slide again in a moment, but if you go on the website, there are some nice architect mock-ups of what the both internal and external setup will be. This is probably my favorite question of the whole afternoon so far, and I'm conscious we're almost out of time now, and this hopefully will, for those of you that have been at the synagogue and sat in the seats, you'll enjoy this one. Will the new seats in the synagogue be more comfortable, especially for Yom Kippur? So Yom Kippur being the Day of Atonement. Just to be very, very clear, there will be no new seats. We are doing nothing other than repair and restore the synagogue itself. Everything we're talking about in the visitor center is in the spaces around the synagogue. And then once you've seen the exhibitions and heard the stories, then the climax, in a way, the finale, is coming into the synagogue itself and seeing it in its almost unaltered state, pretty much. So I'm afraid, you're all very welcome to come to services, but the seats are not getting any more comfortable. Will the new centre be a paying attraction? Yes, it will be. Although for schools, we're working through, as you'll understand, in the we're looking to the post-COVID environment. We're revisiting our business plan in all its respects, but generally we're asking people to pay to come to the visitor centre, hopefully a reasonable and good value cost. But the schools, the reason why I was asking you if you could support us on the schools programme is there will be a lot of schools from less privileged areas where they will not be able to make even a small contribution to it, and we don't want anybody to be missed out from this experience. So if you're able to help us, that will allow us to more easily help as many children, as we said before, of all faiths and none, come and experience this amazing place. Rabbi Shalom, you're on mute.
Yeah, thank you, Howard. I really just wanted to add, I know we're going to wrap up in a second, and I know we won't get to all of the questions, but I just wanted to say it's been incredible looking at the questions that have come from all over the world. And I think it's just so significant to point out that Bevis Mark Synagogue is a site of international significance. And, even the business plan that we have has a very, shall we say, conservative estimate about visitors. But we guess that it's actually going to be far more, and to welcome visitors from across the UK and across the world to come visit the synagogue, to, stay in hotels in the city, to really kind of rejuvenate the area is something that we're really thrilled about. And I'll just say, as rabbi, we look forward to people joining us for worship, to experience the synagogue in all of its glory. And our synagogue has been around for 3 centuries, and we're very much looking forward to being around for 3 centuries more. And all of you are part of making that happen.
Well, I don't think I can say better than that, Rabbi. That's just wonderful. We want to be very respectful of your time. So just before we go, I'm going to put up the slide again. The website is Bevis Marks, or Bevis Marks, however you like to say it, bevismarksheritage.org.uk. For donations, adam@bevismarksheritage.org.uk, or you can find that Support the Foundation on the website. We are out of time. I think we could have gone on and on and on. The questions were great. I've really enjoyed the discussion with you all. Thank you so much, my Lord Mayor and Lady Mayoress, for joining us this afternoon. Thank you, Rabbi Shalom and Marilyn, for your fascinating talks, and to our behind-the-scenes producer, Elliot, who has put so much work into today's session. And our thanks to you all for joining us today and for your encouragement and support. We look forward to seeing you all at Bevis Marks Synagogue very soon.
Thank you. See you soon. Well done.